Hey everybody, welcome to Bible class today. So today, I want to talk about somebody that we don't tend to talk about very much. It's a person that may have something to do with this. Who could that be? So whenever we read in Genesis, we've been talking lately, of course, about Jacob, and you can't really talk about Jacob without saying Jacob and Esau, right? And so whenever we read in Genesis, we find out about these two boys being born. And whenever we first hear about them, there's just a few things we'll get some characteristics of who's Esau. We spent a lot of time talking about Jacob, so we're going to focus on Esau today. But we start out Genesis chapter 25, starting in verse 23 through 28. The Lord said to her being Rebekah, she was pregnant with Jacob and Esau, and he says, "Two nations are in your womb, and two peoples from within you will be separated. One people will be stronger than the other, and the older will serve the younger." When the time came for her to give birth, there were twin boys in her womb. The first to come out was red, and his whole body was like a hairy garment. So they named him Esau. After this, his brother came out with his hand grasping Esau's heel, so he was named Jacob. Isaac was 60 years old when Rebekah gave birth to them. The boys grew up, and Esau became a skillful hunter, a man of the open country, while Jacob was content to stay at home and among the tents. Isaac, who had a taste for wild game, he loved Esau, but Rebekah loved Jacob. So just from that, we gather that Esau, he was hairy like a garment. He liked to hunt, and he was Isaac's favorite son because Isaac liked the wild game. And we also gathered there was a prophecy that God said to Rebekah, the older will serve the younger. And we know that Esau was born first, so that gives us a clue about what's going to happen. And so the account goes on. Chapter 25 still, 29 through 34. Once, when Jacob was cooking some stew, Esau came in from the open country famished. He said to Jacob, "Quick, let me have some of that red stew. I am famished." That is why he was also called Edom. Jacob replied, "First, sell me your birthright." "Look, I'm about to die," Esau said. "What good is the birthright to me?" But Jacob said, "Swear to me first." So he swore an oath to him, selling his birthright to Jacob. Then Jacob gave Esau some bread and some lentil stew. He ate and drank and then got up and left. So Esau despised his birthright. Whenever I read that story, I get the idea that Esau may have been a little bit impulsive, making quick decisions without really thinking about maybe the consequence or what would happen. And maybe he was just a little bit foolish. Maybe. So Esau, we're going to keep reading. This is actually in Genesis chapter 26. He did some other things as well that didn't necessarily please his parents. But this is chapter 26, verse 34 and 5. When Esau was 40 years old, he married Judith, daughter of Beeri the Hittite, and also Basemath, daughter of Elon the Hittite. They were a source of grief to Isaac and Rebekah. So he married Hittite women, and that really caused some grief to his parents. Now, there is a lot that happens in chapter 27. We're going to talk about that on Wednesday. So what you need to know, the very short version, Isaac was going to bless Esau, but some trickery occurred, and he ended up blessing Jacob, and Esau was not excited about it. So at the end of chapter 27, when Esau figures out what has happened and he learns that, there's not so much good for him, he's angry. So this is verse 41 and 42. Esau held a grudge against Jacob because of the blessing his father had given him. He said to himself, "The days of mourning for my father are near. Then I will kill my brother Jacob." Basically, when my dad's gone, I'm going to kill my brother. When Rebekah was told that her elder son Esau had said, or what Esau had said, she sent for her younger son Jacob and said to him, "Your brother Esau is planning to avenge himself by killing you." So Esau, he was vengeful. He held a grudge. Look at what else he did. Following this, Jacob was told, "Go to my brother Laban's house, and marry a woman from there instead of one of these local women, because I hate my life. I loathe my life because of these women." So Esau knew that. Starting in verse 6 of chapter 28. Now Esau learned that Isaac had blessed Jacob and had sent him to Padan Aram to take a wife from there, and that when he blessed him, he commanded him, "Do not marry a Canaanite woman," and that Jacob had obeyed his father and mother and had gone to Padan Aram. Esau then realized how displeasing the Canaanite women were to his father Isaac. So he went to Ishmael and married Mahalath, the sister of Nebaioth and daughter of Ishmael, son of Abraham, in addition to the wives he already had. So you could say that Esau was also a little bit rebellious. He went and married these women because he saw how displeasing they were, and it was one of Abraham's descendants, Ishmael, not the son of promise Isaac, but Ishmael, his uncle. It's his daughter, Basemath. Mahalath. Basemath was one of his other wives. So he's a little bit rebellious. But remember, he's holding this grudge against Jacob because of what Jacob did in stealing his birthright. So Jacob has been gone for 20 years. Remember, 7 years he worked for Rachel, and then another 7 he worked to marry Leah and Rachel. It's kind of an interesting way that occurs. And then another 6 years he works for the flocks and wages that he gets. Then God says, "Go back home." And when he does, he knows basically that Esau will be waiting. So he's a little bit nervous. So he sends in front of him all these gifts. Now, this is a little bit of a longer reading, but I want to read it because I think it tells us a little bit about what's going on. So this comes from chapter 33. We're going to read 1 through 12. Now Jacob looked up. Remember, he's been sending gifts in front of him. And there was Esau coming with 400 men. Do you remember what he said about the next time I see Jacob, basically? He said, "I'm going to kill him." If you were Jacob, would you be a little nervous? I would. So he divided the children among Leah, Rachel, and the 2 female servants. He put the female servants and their children in front, Leah and her children next, Rachel and Joseph in the rear. He himself went on ahead and bowed down to the ground 7 times as he approached his brother. That's 7 times his completeness. It's humility in front of Esau. But Esau ran to meet Jacob, and he embraced him. He threw his arms around his neck and kissed him, and they wept. Then Esau looked up and saw the women and children. "Who are these with you?" he asked. Jacob answered, "They are the children God has graciously given your servant." Jacob is very humble before Esau. Then the female servants and their children approached and bowed down. Next, Leah and her children came and bowed down. Last of all came Joseph and Rachel, and they too bowed down. Esau asked, "What's the meaning of all these flocks and herds that I met?" "To find favor in your eyes, my lord," he said. Remember, he thought Esau was going to be angry and would still want to kill him. So he's sending these gifts maybe to soften the blow. But Esau said, I already have plenty, my brother. Keep what you have for yourself." "No, please," said Jacob. "If I have found favor in your eyes, accept this gift from me. For to see your face is like seeing the face of God, now that you have received me favorably. Please accept the present that was brought to you, for God has been gracious to me, and I have all I need." Let us be on our way. I'll accompany you, said Esau. And because Jacob insisted on the gift, Esau accepted it. 20 years have gone by. And apparently, Esau had given up his grudge. So though Esau was maybe a little bit foolish and impulsive and even vengeful and a touch rebellious, apparently he was forgiving. He probably remembered what had happened. That would be hard to forget. Nevertheless, he let it go. And it turns out, Esau had actually become rather wealthy and powerful. He was saying, I have plenty. He had 400 men with him too, right? That's quite a bit. So Esau also became a nation. In fact, the nation that Esau became is called Edom. And they say they had kings before Israel had a single king. And that may or may not be a good thing, of course, because God said, I want to be your king. Nevertheless, the whole chapter of Genesis 36 is dedicated to Esau and his descendants and who they were, and they became the people known as the Edomites. And as you get into the entrance to the Canaan land, you start to read about the Edomites, the people of Edom. And of course, you read about them in Joshua and Deuteronomy. So remember the prophecy at the birth of Jacob and Esau. God told Rebekah, 2 nations are in your womb and 2 peoples that will be separated. So now, Wednesday, we're going to spend a little more time in Genesis chapter 27, and we're going to talk a little bit more about what this has to do with some of the trickery that occurs. This is goat skin, and it actually has hair on it. And I think it's very interesting to consider how this was used to trick Isaac. So, come back on Wednesday, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. Hope you have a good week.